Witam Państwa i zapraszam na rozmowę z panem Alpayem Gunerem, prezesem firmy MediaMarktSaturn Polska. Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
Firma ta przeszła w ostatnich 2 latach bardzo duże zmiany, przy czym, co jest ciekawe, niekoniecznie związane z pandemią, ale bardzo się zbiegły w czasie i to jest szczęśliwy zbieg okoliczności. A teraz właśnie porozmawiamy więcej o tych zmianach, bo było to naprawdę duże wyzwanie. You assumed the function of MediaMarktSaturn Polska CEO 2 years ago, 4 months before the lockdown and the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. What were your strategic plans at that time?
I think it's very important to understand that Poland is a huge market, not only within Europe, but especially within our markets. And the market is growing, let me use the phrase, like hell, overall, not just within our industry. And it is a very, very important market for us as a company, which means I already came with a clear mindset of which direction we need to possibly go. What happens during these times, you have a 90 or 100 days induction plan. We're not politicians, yes, we're business people, but at the end of the day, you have to listen to your teams, to the people, you have to watch, you have to reflect, you have to take a lot of stakeholders on board. In fact, we built as a team a very clear transformation plan, and I want to underline the word transformation here. And we had about 4 weeks in order to make the first impactful changes to the organization and to the company here in Poland. And that had nothing to do with the pandemic, because that was really just coming a few months later.
So it was a very short time and very quick change.
Very short time, very quick change. Sometimes looking back and, as I said, reflecting, I've questioned a couple of times, was it too fast? But sitting here today and really talking to you, to the stakeholders, to the markets, to customers, no, it had to be very, very fast and quick.
I see. And what changes did you introduce at that time, up to today?
So we are market leader in Europe, very clearly, and we will also keep that position ongoing. However, our business model and the markets have changed over time. So I don't want to now distinguish very specifically within a couple of years, but I think what's very important to mention is that at some point we had to understand that our decentralized model will not give us any more that pace, because the business decisions were not made in the HQ. Business decisions were made locally, which means if we assume we have 81 stores in Poland, we had 81 different business units, where all 81 units did certainly the same direction, but not always consistent business decisions for the company. And that had to change dramatically, which means we started with central purchasing to 100%, so defining categories, central assortments, to have different kind of store formats and define different store formats in order to keep them running and get the same consistent assortment and ranges into the stores. Second big change was that thinking digital first. Again, to be very specific, in the past, a store was a profit center on its own, which means if I didn't sell, but maybe a neighbor store made a sell or the online store made a sell, I, as a store managing director, did not profit from that. So we were also fighting internal against each other and were competitors to each other, which did not work anymore. So the changing the mindset, but also the business model of wherever we take the sell, whether it's digital, whether it's through the call center, whether it's in bricks and mortar, it does not matter, because it's for the good of the company. And it may sound very basic for some people, but it needed a fundamental change in the mindset of our people, but also of the company.
What was the most difficult for you during this period?
When I reflect back, and we need to now filter out the pandemic situation because we didn't know that it was coming very clearly. The most difficult was really being as transparent as possible, underlining again and again the so-called hard transformation, why we had to go that route, why we had to do it, taking the people on board, taking the stakeholders on board, taking the suppliers on board. I think the most difficult in the whole, if we call it one process, was really to keep up with the positive mindset, with the positive spirit of the people, of the teams, because we asked ourselves to change within a year what we have done differently for the last 20 years. And the pandemic came on top of all of that. So managing that was very, very tough, I would say.
Were any changes planned in terms of number of shops, stores, their size, functions, organization?
We did not have any plans in changing the number of shops, other than reviewing, of course, the whole portfolio, which is a very normal procedure doing the whole changes. I mentioned earlier going from a decentralized organization to a very much 100% centralized organization. On the other hand, we are still reviewing whether we can open new locations and we can expand. I can say by huge confidence that we will not end up with 500 shops in Poland. That's not our strategy. But for example, we're opening in 2022 between October and November our new lighthouse concept in Warsaw, which is a completely new format to what we've seen so far. We have already opened 2 of these formats in Milano and in Rotterdam, so Italy and Netherlands, and we will also follow with that format in Warsaw. Besides that, I think that we need a kind of smaller core formats and formats which we did not do so far, which we should introduce in the next, let's say, 3 years.
And could you tell something about the changes in terms of online, of omnichannel, multi-channel?
So we were purchasing very much decentralized, and one of the big key changes was working together with our suppliers and centralizing our logistics and centralizing our whole demand planning into 2 big central warehouses. Again, which is a very a normal procedure for any kind of supermarket chains, but within our industry that's fairly new and a new trend within the last few years. So we have centralized our logistics. We are purchasing all centrally from the headquarters. The suppliers are delivering to our central warehouses, over 80%, which will be 100% reached by the end of next year. And we're then reallocating from the central warehouse and distributing the products to our local shops. And big benefit, of course, is that we have always safe availabilities for the consumers, for the customers. Whereas in the past, we had too much stock in some of the locations and no stock in other locations. It took us far too long to transfer the products over. What does it mean online? Because that was your initial question. We built that platform in order to secure any online availability and online sales, because as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter where we do the sales. Important is that the customer is happy and customer chooses the channel for themselves. We don't only use the 2 central warehouses for the online sales. We use also additionally all the 81 stores we have as local hubs. So it means if a product is not available in the central warehouse, then one of the stores will kick in automatically and will send the product on behalf of the central warehouse to the customer's home, for example. Plus, What we also do is, as I said, we will never have 500 shops in Poland. We also don't need 500 shops. It means we have 25,000 pickup points. So, for example, just to mention one, because I think everyone knows Żabka, you can order all the small items from us today and pick them up in, for example, any Żabka location, but also in many other locations of partnership brands. And 25,000 pickup points means we are everywhere in Poland, and any customer can reach us within a very fair distance.
There is a problem of last miles for the sellers. So you resolved this problem with these points and coordination of logistics.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it problem, but I would call it accessibility. And if a customer cannot access your brand, then the customer will also not be very confident to buy from yourself. Yes, it's all about choices. But if you give the customer choice to either visit your store or pick up from your store, or you deliver it directly to their homes, or they can even pick up from any, let's say, local partner shops within, let's say, 500 meters of where they're living, then you just have more opportunities to get closer to the customer. Because at the end, it's about convenience, and the customer should really pick and choose whatever service where they want to have. And that's the new mindset where, say, digital first, digital sales, and digital sales doesn't mean online only. It means the combination of the whole multi-channel really with each other.
So the most important is the customer experience in all of that.
Absolutely, to especially deliver consistent customer experience throughout all channels and use the benefits. We are really surprised still how many customers are calling us directly. We have a website like anyone has. We have all the stores, but customers are calling and ordering online, however, through the call center. So, which means they're making purchases via phones. And if you asked me a few years earlier, I would have said that this business is going to die or get very minimal, let's say at least. But it's a huge part of the business, over 5% still.
So it's truly omnichannel.
Absolutely, truly omni-channel, and we have a far way to go in order to still improve a lot of opportunities.
For many businesses in the pandemic, there were also difficulties, challenges, and from which lessons could be taken, derived. And how was about your company?
I always split a little bit the pandemic situation into two parts. The first part was the unknown, where we as individuals, the people, families, businesses, you name them, were really not knowing what is going to happen. Up to the point where I want to even say that we were not only concerned, but maybe we were also afraid of the future, yes, because we never had a situation like this. So the first thing, we had to react very, very fast in order to take care of the teams and of the people, in order to secure and take ownership of, don't worry about the future. We are the market leader in Europe, and whatever happens, we will survive. That was a little bit the first part of the pandemic. We were quite lucky, I would say, overall, that we understood within a few days that the consumers have switched immediately to other channels like online, yes, very obvious. And our sales was just ongoing. So it was not that, people, as they thought, and as I maybe interpreted here, were afraid and just locked in at homes and not knowing what to do. Business went just on as usual. And at the same time, people have redistributed and reorganized their lives. And the way how I describe it here, of course, and the way how you ask it, it sounds very simple at the moment, but day by day, it was a very much different feeling of emotions. And the the more we went into the pandemic, from let's say mid-March 2020 to around beginning of April, the more confident we got to say, okay, business is going on, the world has not stopped moving, yes, and at the same time, we're still working, but we are somehow working differently. We are organized differently. 97% of the people were working from home. Yes, we were connecting to each other. We were phoning each other more often. We were using the video calls much more often. You name all of them, yes, Zoom or Teams or whatever. And so technically, nothing has changed, but the environment has changed a little bit.
The way of work.
The way of working, the way of communication. And before even looking back and reviewing that, the next challenge within was, I think, the challenge the society overall got. School closures, how do you manage kids at home, how do you manage your life? Yes, again, it sounds quite simple the way how I describe it here, but the complications throughout every day and the challenges they gave back to any parts of your life, not only business, we had a huge responsibility to manage that and to act very differently, maybe to previous times. And I think overall, it's always better to get the answer from the people, which we've also done. We're doing internal evaluations, so-called Net Promoter Scores for people. And if I look into the score of how we manage COVID, I think that was managed very, very well. But I have to really thank a lot of times to our people and to our teams, how they managed and really overcame the situation.
I see. One of the effects of the pandemic is the new, this very dynamic economic reality, which is called new normal. So it needs much more to be much more elastic, much more resilient, and quick in reactions on the customers' needs or activities of competition. And how is it going in your company now? Because the new normal will stay with us for longer. What will be done? In the next months, in the nearest future year?
As I mentioned at the very beginning, we started 3-4 months before the whole COVID situation came, and we started to change the pace, and we shifted very, very fast within our mindsets. We had to, on the one hand side, but also then what happened is we got into a new normal before the pandemic. So I would say we are very confident, I'm very confident that we are already working in a completely different environment. The company today where we're sitting in is a very different company where we would have said 2 years ago. So we have changed 180 degrees. So I'm very confident in underlining that as well, which means I'm also very confident about the future. Whatever happens, if the pandemic situation goes on, or there will be adjustments or any other influences, we're ready for that. And I think all of the teams, I'm very confident the teams are ready. Nobody will face any difficulties because we would know how to organize and how to work. So that's why I kind of don't like the wording new norm anymore, because we've already overcome that. And I think the new norm is also further challenging anybody, which means there's not a new norm where we now stop, but we need to always evaluate whether it's the right thing what we're doing today. So further changes are to come.
I see. The new normal also means challenges related to logistics and IT solution. You told me some about it, but maybe you would like to say something more, because it's now important in such a market.
Absolutely. Convenience is king for the customer. And not only that, we learned that we have to deliver fast to the customer, or we have to serve fast to the customer, or we have to be even closer to the customer. but we have to give a lot of the tools to the customer's control. What does it mean? Today, it's very normal that a customer expects, let's say, to buy something and order something, whether it's a washing machine or it's a TV set or any services, that customer can pick and choose at what point they're buying, from where they're buying, and at what point they get the delivery of the service or the product. So whether it's an afternoon delivery with a clear time spot to say between 1 and 1:30, or it's I want to have it delivered in 2 weeks because in 2 weeks I'm going to refurbish my kitchen. Then in 2 weeks' time, I expect it between 8 and 11 o'clock in the morning. These are the very much new services and new ways we already started to shift. So we give a lot of flexibility to our customers from our delivery systems where the customer can pick and choose. However, we need to further improve and go to more details. This is, for example, one of the major improvements we're focusing on at the moment.
So you give your customers now also not only the product, not only the delivery, but also all service around it.
Absolutely. So whether it's an installation at home, whether it's a calibration of your TV to get the best service out of your TV, to get the best performance out of your brand new 75-inch TV, but it's also about extended warranties, or whether you want to save and protect your display, or you want to set up your laptop in order to make it work. We offer everything 360-degree around, not only in store, but also where possible at home, but also in an online purchase where we prepare the product already in the central warehouse and send it kind of preset and pre-aligned with the customer to their homes.
I see. Before you took over the management of MediaMarktSaturn Poland, you were the managing other businesses on this in this market, and you have extensive experience. Was it useful in Poland when this big change was going on?
I think MediaMarkt is the clear market leader in Europe and a very strong player in Poland. And as a market leader and as a business with so much success and so much heritage, sometimes it can happen that you get slow in some ways, because being a big ship and turning a big ship always takes longer. That's a law by nature. But I think what we have benefited very much, again, as a team overall, and it is really an effort of the team that we turned around the big ship in a very, very short period of time. We made almost the impossible to possible, because in all the plans, in all the kind of processes, we did not think of a pandemic situation that came on top of all the challenges. And therefore, I think, let's say, the pace of, let's call it a startup, and the mindset of a startup has also helped us massively in turning around a big ship. That's how I would kind of summarize it.
I see. So the people could be in the center, you know how to manage many things and make a support of people very strong. Yes.
Absolutely. And moving fast together and actually also to break a lot of things. And sometimes when you break a lot of things in fast changes, you also break slightly right things, but you can build them back up very, very quickly. The important thing is that people are aligned, people understand, and people go the same direction.
And they communicate their needs and...
Absolutely. Absolutely, the needs, and also being transparent with the process.
Yes, they know what is going on.
Yes.
A lot has changed during the last 2 years. And what remained unchanged?
Unchanged is our entrepreneurial spirit, which means it's a little bit paradox now. We are centralized. We are very consistent with our service to our customers. We are very consistent in our processes, the way how we do things, how we deal with certain things. However, what has not changed in MediaMarkt, and this is really one of, I would say, from my experience, I may be wrong, but one of the less companies where you can do whatever you want to do if it's the right thing for the business. So it means the entrepreneurial spirit has not changed. If there's a great idea coming from the central warehouse, a great idea coming from a store manager, from a team leader, from a colleague in any of the locations, then we have got the freedom to share it. We have got the freedom and also the confidence in order to change and improve. And I would say the focus on the people has definitely not changed. It was very hard, but changing the processes does not mean that that culture has changed. So we have got that spirit, and I really appreciate that.
So I hope that it will go on in such a good way, like so far. Thank you very much for the interview, and I wish you the execution of all plans and goals.
Dziękuję bardzo. Zapraszam do MediaMarkt.